Hey Crafty fam, it's Alex Vanover and welcome back to my craft room. And if you are new here, then especially welcome because I am so glad that you're here. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make a t-shirt using iron-on or HTV, which stands for heat transfer vinyl. If you have never made a shirt before and this is your very first try, then this is the perfect video for you. So let's get started. So the first step to making your very first shirt with heat transfer vinyl is to figure out what file that you are going to use. We are going to use this free file right here that says get to the point. By the time you watch this video, it's possible that it won't be free anymore, but I'm going to try to use the free file so that nobody has to pay anything. This is linked down in the description below, so if you just want to go into the description of this video, you can find this SVG, or you can find it from designbundles.net under their free section. So you're just going to click the download free now button to get started. And it is downloading. You can see it right here. So we'll open it up in the folder. And then typically when you download files like this, they have to be unzipped. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to right click and then select extract all. And then you want to pick a location that's easy to find. I'm going to click browse, and I have a craft and SVG file folder on my computer. So it's inside craft files, and then I click SVGs. And I always like to create a new folder so that I know where I got it from and what the design is called. So I'm going to right click and select new and then folder. And I'm going to put DB, which stands for design bundles, and then get to the point. Then I'll select that folder. Wherever that went. Oh, there it is. DB get to the point, select the folder, and then click extract. Then once it opens back up, you know that it is unzipped. So then you're going to open up your Cricut design space, and you're going to go under upload down here at the bottom of the toolbar, and then you're going to select upload image and then browse. And then you're going to go back to the location where you just saved your file. So for me, that's under craft files and then SVGs and then DB get to the point. There it is. And then I'll open up that folder. And then you don't really want to worry about this Mac OS X folder. You just want to go into the Design Bundles folder. And you want to select the one that looks like the little Internet Explorer. And when you hover over it, it says it's the SVG document. That's the best one to choose. Then you're going to click open, and you'll see that it opens here in Cricut Design Space. You can give it a name, and then I also like to give it tags so that when I go in to search my design space, it's easy to find. So I'll just put the tag in as point because I'm sure that that's what I would search if I was looking for this. And then maybe I'll do comma cactus as well, since it has a cactus on it. Then I'm going to click save. And you'll see it goes into your images. So then you just need to click it and you'll highlight it with the green box around it and then click insert images. So now that it's in Cricut Design Space, there's a few things that we need to do. And the first thing is that we want to resize it. So I'm gonna go into the width up here at the top under size and make it 10 inches wide. I am making a medium size adult size shirt. So typically 10 inches is about my average. If you are doing like a small adult shirt, you might wanna do like 9 inches wide, and if you're maybe doing like an extra large or a 2X, you might want to do 11 inches, but like I said, 10 inches works really well most of the time for me. So then you can see all these layers are selected here on the right. I'm also going to click attach, and what this does is it keeps all my pieces in the right place so that when I go to the next screen, they're not going to be scattered all over the place. So once you have everything where you want it and you've attached everything, next we're going to go to the make it screen, and we can see the image that we're going to cut. Another really important piece that you need to remember when you're cutting heat transfer vinyl or HTV is that you want to select this mirror button right here. You just want to flip that little switch on, and it's going to cut backwards. And I'll show you guys why that matters here in just a couple minutes. Just make sure that you don't forget to do it. So then you're going to click continue. So after your machine connects, you want to make sure that you're selected on the right device. I'm going to use my Cricut Maker, so I'm going to select that from the drop down menu. And next we're going to select our material. So if you have the Cricut Explorer Air 2 or any of the Explorer model machines, you'll just want to turn your dial to the iron on setting. And iron on is just another name for heat transfer vinyl or HTV. That's what Cricut calls their iron on or their HTV. So you'll want to change that dial and move it to iron iron-on. Since I am using the Cricut Maker, I always select the material from the computer because there is no dial on the Cricut Maker. And I'm gonna choose mine as everyday iron-on because I'm just using Siser EasyWeed, something super, super simple. And for most regular HTVs like Siser and StarCraft, you're always gonna start with the everyday iron-on setting for the Cricut Maker. So now that I have everything ready to go, let's hop over to my machine and I'll show you how to load your heat transfer vinyl and how to cut it and then how to make your shirt. So the next step is to add your heat transfer vinyl or iron-on onto your mat. So you want to take the shiny cover sheet off of your mat like this and set it aside in a place that you're not going to lose it. And be very careful, do not put that on the floor because it is very slippery. Ask me how I know, you can easily trip on it. Then you want to take your heat transfer vinyl, and again, I'm using Siser EasyWeed. I highly recommend starting with either Siser EasyWeed or StarCraft SoftFlex for beginners. And you want to find the shiny side of the sheet and the dull side of the sheet. So the shiny side of the sheet looks like this. The shiny side is actually applied to the heat transfer vinyl, and it's called the carrier sheet. And that's what's going to allow you to transfer your design from your machine over to your shirt. So you always want to put your HTV, unless you're using printed pattern HTV, shiny side down with the duller side facing up. This is why we mirrored our image, because we are going to actually cut the design into the back side of the heat transfer vinyl, and the front side is just the carrier sheet. So when you cut it in this direction and then you weed it, you flip it around the correct way and the design is oriented correctly. So once you put your shiny side down, then you want to line your HTV up in the top left corner of your mat, just like this. And you want to use your grid lines to make sure that you are going to cover your entire design with HTV. So for example, I know that my design is 10 inches wide, so I know that I have HTV covering at least 10 inches, and I know that it's not quite this tall, so I know for sure that I have enough HTV to cover my entire design. So let's go ahead and load this guy into the machine. So next I'm gonna open up my Cricut Maker, and you'll see that the arrow is flashing, and that means that it's time to go ahead and load my heat transfer vinyl. So I'm gonna put my mat up against the rollers right here, and I'm gonna give it just a little bit of pressure. Then I'm gonna press this arrow and I'm gonna allow the mat to go into the machine. Then once you're ready and the C button is flashing, press the C button and let your Cricut cut out your heat transfer vinyl. So the next step in making your shirt is to weed your heat transfer vinyl, and that just means to get rid of any of the excess vinyl so that you can just see the design left on the carrier sheet. So first you're gonna peel the HTV off of the mat and set the mat aside. You may want to go ahead and cover it again with that clear sheet so that it doesn't get dirty. The cleaner that your mats can stay, the longer that they are going to be useful to hold down your heat transfer vinyl. So set that aside, and then it's time to weed. So I'm gonna be using tools from 143vinyl.com, which is where I highly recommend that you grab your tools from. You can also use the Cricut tools if that's all that you have, no worries at all. I just find these a little bit easier to use. You'll also want a pair of scissors handy. So, and the tools I'm gonna be using are the pin pen that look like this. They come in several different colors, as well as their stab and grab tweezers in case I need them. I also love like all of their tools. So I will definitely link all this down in the description in case you wanna check any of this out. I do find it a lot easier to use than the Cricut tools, but like I said, if Cricut tools are all you have, that's totally no problem. So I'm gonna unroll my heat transfer vinyl, and the first thing I'm gonna do is actually cut off below my design because there's all this extra vinyl here that I don't want to ruin because it didn't end up cutting in my design. Just make sure that you don't cut off any of your design, of course, so that you don't have to cut it again. But these are called scraps, and it's always good to save scraps for smaller projects. So when you weed, you're always gonna weed again with the shiny carrier side down, and you're just gonna start over here in a corner and kind of get rid of all of this excess vinyl. So I like to use my pin pen, which I explained it, but the way that the pin pen works is it's actually a pen body, but it actually has a stainless steel tip needle in the end of it instead of a regular pen. And this just makes it a lot more comfortable to hold. It's also a much more comfortable angle to weed your projects at than the angle of the weeding hook for me. So I always like to start in a corner, and I just like to use my pin pen to peel back the first layer of my vinyl like this. Another tool that I forgot to mention is this iVine weeding berry, which I will link from Amazon. I love this little thing for putting all of my scraps in because it keeps it way more organized. And even though these big pieces are kind of in a pile, some of these smaller pieces can be a real pain. Plus there's a suction cup on the bottom so I can just stick it to my mat and it makes it super easy. And if you're using a pin pen like I am, you kind of want to treat the stainless steel tip needle in a scoop motion to remove your HTV. You don't actually want to stab your HTV and then pull it away because the chances that you'll rip your design are a lot higher that way. Alright, and then once all of your excess HTV is weeded away, you can flip over the design and you can see that it is oriented the right way. So the next step is to heat up your iron. So you can definitely use just a regular household iron to apply HTV, especially when you're getting started. I know for a lot of people, you'll hear people on Facebook say you can't use an iron, and granted, it's not ideal. Typically an easy press or a heat press would make it easier than an iron, but if you're just starting out and you're just figuring out if you like crafting with the Cricut, I definitely would not worry about investing in any more equipment until you get started, so an iron will totally suffice. So when it comes to heating up your iron, I like to put my iron on the second highest setting that my iron has. So for my iron, that's the wool setting. But of course I have I have no water in my water tank and I have the steam turned completely off. So set your iron aside safely, heat it up, and I'll show you what else you need to apply your heat transfer vinyl. So while the iron is heating up, let's talk about some other things that you need to use when applying heat transfer vinyl. The second thing that you need to pay attention to, other than of course your design, is the surface that you're actually pressing on top of. So whether that's a tabletop or a tile floor or something like that, one thing that you definitely do not want to do is you do not want to apply heat transfer vinyl on top of your ironing board. And the reason for that is because as you're pressing down with the iron, you're going to be causing the surface to potentially bow if it's not hard enough. So ironing boards tend to bow a little bit more so that the iron doesn't get good contact with your heat transfer vinyl. So I recommend doing it on a very sturdy table, a tile floor, a wood floor, or something like that. But of course, don't forget to protect your surface so that you don't burn anything underneath your shirt. Another thing that you can use to make your heat transfer vinyl application a little bit easier is a plank of wood like this. This is an old piece of wood that I bought at Michael's years ago, and I never ended up using it for a sign. So I tend to put this underneath my shirts when I use heat transfer vinyl. So if you have a scrap piece of wood laying around, that would be great. But if you don't, you can also use a folded kitchen towel. So this is just a regular towel from my kitchen. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold it a couple of times so that it can actually go underneath the surface of where I'm pressing. And the reason that this is helpful is because it's actually going to lift up the surface of my shirt a little bit higher than the seams, because the seams of your shirt are kind of the enemy of heat transfer vinyl. I'll show you what I mean by that. So you're gonna apply your heat transfer vinyl somewhere around here on your t-shirt. But if the tip of your iron is pressing up on one of these seams, that can really mess up the contact the iron is able to get with that heat transfer vinyl, and it can cause your contact to not be as good. So as many things that you can put underneath your shirt to raise up the surface of your shirt and push down your seams, that is always better. Another thing that you need to make sure that you're using with heat transfer vinyl is parchment paper. Parchment paper is great because it it protects your iron from getting any heat transfer vinyl on it. The reason that that could happen is because after you peel off the carrier sheet, if you are layering and you're ending up removing carrier sheets, or if you just decide to press again, you can actually get your heat transfer vinyl stuck to the bottom of your iron. Ask me how I know, because I have definitely cleaned that off my iron before. So using household parchment paper, not wax paper, parchment paper over top of your heat transfer vinyl is a great way to protect your iron and make sure that you don't have any messes. So let me set up this little station and I'll show you guys how I would do it. So even though I have a mat down, I'm gonna go ahead and put this wood plank underneath everything, and that's just actually gonna protect my table from getting too much heat. And then I'm gonna put my shirt on top of this plank of wood, and in case you guys can't see that outline, I have the seam going off the side of the wood, and that way it doesn't get in the way of my heat transfer vinyl. And since my shirt is super wrinkly, I'm gonna go ahead and heat up my iron. So the next thing that you'll want to do is place your heat transfer vinyl onto your shirt. So you may want to bring the collar of your shirt back onto your surface for just a second. You want to place your HTV design about 3 inches underneath the collar of your shirt. So one easy way to remember that is just like a 3-finger length underneath your collar. So if I'm gonna measure about like this, I want my design to be somewhere about here. So, and if you're having trouble lining it up side to side, you can sort of use the tag as a center of reference, and you want to split that design in half, of course, and then that's how you want to line it up. Another thing that you can do to help make sure that your design is straight is you can actually fold your carrier sheet in half, like this. And that will create a line down the center of your HTV, but it's not gonna hurt anything. Once you pull it back apart, you'll know where the center of your design is, and you can line that up with your tag. So those are just a couple tricks that make it a little bit easier when you don't quite have an eye for heating up or for applying heat transfer vinyl just yet. So it looks like I've got a good 3-finger length underneath my collar. And next I'm going to, since I'm using the plank of wood, I'm probably not gonna put the kitchen towel underneath my design, but just keep that in mind as an option in case you don't have any spare wood lying around. Next, I'm gonna get a piece of parchment paper that's just as big as my design and lay that over top of everything. So I'm gonna lay it down with the curls facing down like this. That way I don't have any issues with curling. And before I get started, I'm gonna double check that my entire design is on top of this piece of wood so that I don't miss any contact with my HTV. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and take my iron and I'm gonna place it straight down on my design. I'm not gonna move it, and I'm gonna keep it in place for 10 to 15 seconds per section. Then I'm gonna pick it up and move it to the next section until my whole design is covered. One big mistake that I see a lot of newbies making is they tend to use the iron and move it around in an ironing motion, but that can definitely cause your HTV to wrinkle. So let me show you what I mean. I'm just gonna take it straight down like this, and then I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on it and count to 10. So once I've got my 10 seconds, I'm gonna lift it straight up, and then I'm gonna move to the middle section of my design and hold it there again for 10 seconds. And finally, I'm gonna do one more press on the far right side to make sure I cover my entire design. Then I'm gonna lift my iron straight up and set it aside safely. Then I'm going to peel away my parchment paper and make sure that my design has stuck. And the reason I'll know if it's stuck is because it's gonna come off the carrier sheet immediately. If you start to pull off your carrier sheet and some of your HTV is still sticking to this sticky carrier sheet, you can put your parchment paper back over that area and you can press for another 5 to 10 seconds until you get the whole thing stuck down. So I can see this little area right here is coming back up. So I'm gonna lay my parchment paper back down and make sure that HTV is not wrinkled. And I'm gonna put that parchment paper over it again. And I'm gonna press this far right section with a little more pressure for another 5 seconds or so. So let's try peeling from this side and make sure everything is well stuck down. Oh, and that part of my tea is sticking up too, so I'm gonna redo that section as well. See guys, it happens even to the best of us. All right, so I'm gonna repress this middle section for another 5 seconds or so. All right, and keep in mind guys that when you are trying to do this, especially for the first time, this takes a lot of trial and error. So don't be frustrated if you don't get it right the first time. It definitely takes some practice, no doubt. Oh, goodness, okay. I'll have to repress that section again. These little T's are just being stubborn on me. So since I'm having issues with both of these tops of my tees, I'm gonna go ahead and maybe repress the top section of this and angle my iron in a different way that's gonna make sure that these tees get a little bit more contact. I can see that this little guy has some wrinkles. There, okay. So I'm gonna put my parchment paper back over top and press the tops of my tees again. Maybe we'll go a little closer to 10 seconds. Okay, so then we'll remove our parchment paper and try again. Another thing that you can do if you choose is that when you're using an HTV like Siser EasyWeed, it is actually hot or cold peel. And what that means is that you can remove the carrier sheet immediately, but if you're having problems with getting a lot of your HTV to stick, you can let your heat transfer vinyl cool a little bit before pulling off this carrier sheet. And if you ever have questions about what the pressing settings are for your HTV, go back to where you bought it and look up the instructions. So my heat transfer vinyl is from 143vinyl.com, and we actually have a cutter settings document on the website that tells you the cut and press settings for every single kind of heat transfer vinyl that we carry. So I refer to that for my cut and press settings, but you can also find cut and press settings, especially with directions using an iron, on SiserNA.com, which stands for SiserNorthAmerica.com. So I'll link that down in the description in case you want some written instructions. All right, so let's see if we fixed it. There we go. So as you can see, my HTV pulled up the carrier sheet pulled off without a problem. And it took a little bit of trial and error to get things just right, but it worked perfectly. So keep in mind that after you apply heat transfer vinyl, you need to wait 24 hours before washing it, but otherwise, congratulations, you've finished your very first shirt with heat transfer vinyl. Great job. If you have watched this far along in the video, then I would love to connect with you on social media. So please be sure to find me at DIY Alex Vanover on pretty much all major social platforms. I'll also put direct links down in the description in case you want to find me super easily. And if you make anything using my tutorials and you happen to share them on Instagram, please use the hashtag DIYAlex because I love to see what you guys are creating and making. It just makes my heart so happy. And if you haven't already, please click right here to subscribe to the DIY Alex YouTube channel. Scroll down just a little bit and ring the bell right next to subscribe so that you never miss when I upload a new video, Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're new to the Cricut, then check out my Cricut for Beginners playlist right here. It has a ton of videos using all the basic skills that it requires to use a Cricut, so I think it would be super helpful for you. I hope we can craft again soon.